Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well. Your AFL Fantasy 2024 season is done. The good news is there's still a little bit of fantasy footy to roll around with AFL finals happening at the moment. But it's the time of the year where the gang from AFL Fantasy put out their annual survey and they look for feedback from the community about things they're doing well, things then, well, they could tweak and adjust a little bit to really improve, and things that their community just doesn't want to see. So in this video here at the Coaches Panel, we are sharing 6 things we would love to see change for 2025. Before we roll through the 6, a reminder, we actually love playing, and I love playing AFL Fantasy, the 2 trades a week and a heap of the different customizations and variables they've brought in over the past couple of years. I think it's been a real great breath of fresh air to the AFL fantasy football community at large. I think they do a pretty good job, but there's definitely, as always with everything, areas of improvement, and feedback has been asked for, so let's share it. Number 1, let's go straight to the draft formats of the game. I'd love them to continue to expand the customizations that they've added over the last 12 months or so. Draft has not really had a home platform since Ultimate Footy folded a little bit over 12 months ago. And as a result, I feel like those that love to play drafts just haven't had a format that's landed with the same depth of care and customization that Ultimate Footy did create for us. So I think there's some things they could do. Category leagues were quite popular in Ultimate Footy, and not just voluming out, giving more points for goals or giving more points for hitouts, but actually full customization of a more traditional category league. In addition to that, I'd love to see if they could code in for us some specific player positions that have to be filled. We've got that already at the moment with the rucks. Could they do that with, I don't know, a key position forward or a key position defender, opening up the way we have to choose to pick? I think there's a bunch of different customizations. And these are just 2 very simple and short, sharp ones, but 2 very easy ways that more customization opens up some uniqueness in the league, which I think only is a good thing to do. Drafts for me is probably my most favorite of all the formats to play. Regardless of how it works, I love the idea of the trade, the draft, the dynamics that sit around that, and not everybody gets Errol Goulden, for example. So I'd love to see them add a little bit more expanded customizations in the draft. Number 2, I want to get rid of best 18. Yes, I hear you say you agree. Get rid of opening round, get rid of those best 18s and happy days. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying get rid of best 18 altogether. Every single week, even those dreaded mid-season buys, let's still allow up to 22 players scoring on field. The reason I'm suggesting that is I want to see a greater level of scoring and squad diversity in the AFL fantasy community. It's really quite common now to see a lot of similar teams, not just in the starting squads, and see some diversification as the year goes on, but even strongly through the year. It's really only in the last 4 to 6 weeks that we start to see variations in league matchups of more than 6 to 10, while in rankings it's more than just the 3 or 4 differentials. So I think the removing of the best 18 does a couple of things. One, it removes where we've been protected with poor on-field scores from largely failed cash cows with the occasional injury. It keeps that variable in the mix. Additionally, it adds another level of scoring diversity across all rounds. And then third is what it actually does. It opens up some new strategies for us. And I think while it's not making it too much more complex for a casual, it does open up new strategies where now it's like, well, do I load up on this particular round, or do I spread the load a bit more evenly? When do I trade into that premium? Their fixture's good, but all of a sudden I'm going to not just struggle to get to 22, I will not get to 22 on field. Because one of the things I know that for the AFL fantasy community that is important is, one, that it's attainable and available for anyone to play. And I think the 2 trades a week of use it or lose it certainly adds to that. But we say we're for the casual, but in parts, we divide ourselves of the opportunity of a new strategic element. And we've spoken to some casual supporters across social media, and they're like, well, why did certain weeks only 18 counting wider, other weeks 22. As great a job as AFL Fantasy do at advertising it, if a casual is truly not that in tuned and paying attention as much, there's a bit of what are we, why are we, where are we, how are we? So I just think leave it 22 a week. Let's go. Let's embrace that challenge and chaos and balance our teams out a little bit more accordingly. Number 3, change I'd love to see come into AFL Fantasy is I'd love to see them make a coding fix in the way that trades work. I love the edit trade feature. I think they've done a great job bringing that in formally recently. It's definitely got a workout in my team, and chances are it's got a pretty high workout in yours. There seems to be a little bit of a bug glitch that when you try to make a trade with a player that's a late round adjustment, and it's got a dual position attachment to it, it does get a little bit glitchy and hard, and you've got to move the player through the utility position and reverse the trade and move that and do that. Look, in the end, it works and you can make it work. But if being ease of use is of high primary drive for AFL Fantasy, again, if they want to be attractive to the casual player, not just us nutters that are happy to spend a couple of hours every single week looking at it, let alone watching and waiting to see what a rolling lockout and laid outs might do to us, I think things like that can force a level of frustration in the community for a coach that either doesn't have time, understanding, or patience, or a combination of the three, to be able to make that happen. So for me, I'd love to see that really land through. And I think that could just be a simple thing. Now, I know there's been some talk in the off-season and across the fantasy community that we'll see a bunch of different stuff roll through differently in terms of about the interface, in terms of how the back end of it actually works. And that would be fantastic to see. And hopefully they can make that adjustment so that it's a bit more native and intuitive, and doesn't make it overly difficult to make those edit trades, especially when it's got a dual position attached to it. Number 4, I think we're up to. It's a little one, and maybe I'm just a little OCD, but one of the things that just is annoying in AFL Fantasy when you open up the app or you open up the desktop is while you can put the player in any specific position you want, geez, part of me would like just the ability to click on a function to go, if you want to put Goulden at M1, even if he's by average or by price, you're M4. Yeah, I'm picking on Goulden today, hey? Just give me the option of, do I want to filter it by customization, whether it's by price or whether it's by average? Maybe it's because I've come from a more Supercoach and Dream Team background, to be frank, which most of us that have been playing for over a decade have come, because these formats have been around longer than AFL Fantasy. But they've been customized for a very long time based on average. So maybe it's my history that's leading it. But I think giving coaches the ability, again, customization is key to engagement and key to personalization. If there's a way to be able to filter that in a way that's less, all of a sudden this player's here, here, and there, I think aesthetically I just like the look of that. Is it a deal breaker? Of course not. I've been playing AFL Fantasy for a decade with it like this. But for me, I'd love to see them be able to give that ability back to coaches. Customization and change, I'd love to see happen at number 5. I actually want to make the game, well, hard is the wrong term, but I'd love to see it take us that little bit deeper to get into the end of the season luxury trades. And so there's a bunch of different ways you could do that. For me, I'd be saying the way I'd do it is either reduce the salary cap. I know AFL Fantasy like to have it linked symmetrically to what the AFL salary cap is. Whether you need to do that or not for explaining of ease, I'm not sure. Or you want to make players more expensive. I don't know if you want to go down that route. So to me, I'd be saying reduce the salary cap. Politely, I don't think anybody really cares that it's the same as an AFL Fantasy. Salary cap is the same as what an AFL club has to do. I know the symmetry feels lovely, but I don't really think that anybody cares about that, to be honest. And I just want to make it a little bit more intriguing about the trades that you make to how to get there. So some might say that's moving it a bit more towards a super coach and a dream team approach. Arguably, you could say with the moves they've made, it's more of an AFL Fantasy style approach with the more trades and things of that nature. But to me, I think they could just add a little bit more dynamic with just a percentage increase or decrease rather, should I say, towards our salary cap. Just make it that little bit more 2 or 3 more weeks it takes to get to the completed quote unquote team of premiums. Whereas a year like this, it felt like 6-8 weeks out, we were in luxury trades. And I just would love to see it kind of stretch a little bit deeper in the year. Now, I know it always is variable in every single year, but it does feel like more and more as the seasons go by, we get to luxury trading earlier and earlier. I'd like to just add a little bit more challenge back into the game. And a challenge not because the game's easy, far from saying that, but more in just in terms of challenge of how you build your side. And then the last change I'd suggest making is get rid of the vice captaincy. So a little history lesson. It's only been a handful of years that AFL Fantasy has had a rolling lockout. And the reason a vice captain was critical when it was a full lockout Friday night was, well, you couldn't make the adjustment if your captain did or didn't play. And so, well, you needed that backup, much like you need the bench emergency, because you couldn't make the adjustment because the game was locked out. Whereas what moving into a rolling lockout phase has done, I know there's a kind of split in the community, almost 50-50 of some love rolling lockout, some hate it. Personally, I'm quite comfortable with it. Yes, there's challenges around being near a device and being able to keep an ear to the ground. Absolutely, that is a challenge. But it's the same level of challenge, you could argue, conversely, of someone that doesn't notice it. So it's always going to be a pro and a con for coaches through there, whether they're locked in or out of their team. So I'm saying I'm happy to keep it. But I feel like we've let the genie out of the bag now over the last few years, and it's really hard to let that genie get stuck back in. And so therefore, what's one thing we could do to just kind of make the game more, make a decision and let it go? And that's partially what the community that are wanting forced lockout is saying is, I just want to make a decision and then I just want to be able to relax and let it go. Okay, let's take away the vice captaincy, which was there as a backup when we were in full fixed lockout for a weekend. We're not there now. Let's take that away and let's load that captaincy decision with a little bit more weight. At the moment, we're getting 2 rolls of the dice here. And as long as you got a red dot or a blue dot, if you want to still keep playing best 18s, it's no problem at all. But to me, let's really make that captaincy decision a significant one. Let's not give ourselves a second chance. If we want the rolling lockout community wants to stick with it, that's fine. But make that call, one-stop shop captain. And if they don't play, well, you can take that off pretty easy. Now, here you go, oh, but what if I miss the lockout and that my captain's there? It's like, well, okay, that's a part of the game. But maybe you make that captaincy call early in a week. Now you fit your captaincy choices around your weekend. At the end of the day, any change you make to the game is going to make an impact, and there will always be a portion of the community that are negatively affected by it. Fully aware of that, but these are just 6 ideas that we've had to put forward to you to say, hey, these are some changes that we think could be pretty cool to AFL Fantasy, but do you agree or disagree? Do you like any of the suggestions? Comment below and let us know if you got your own change of what you want to see to AFL Fantasy. Comment below. But more importantly than all of that is a link in the bio we've given is the feedback form survey that AFL Fantasy have given. If you like things in the game or you don't like things in the game, this is the best pathway to be able to have your voice being heard. So whether your ideas come through or not, fantastic. But either way, let your voice be heard. Don't have something in the game frustrate you and then not take those 3 or 4 minutes to fill out that survey and let your voice be heard. And so can I encourage you, whether you agree with our changes that we'd love to see, whether you want something to change or not, have your say in that feedback form. And that way you can well and truly make the changes that you want to see happen in a game we all enjoy playing and are all looking forward to playing in 2025. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Good luck if your team is playing in AFL finals. If you're playing some kind of finals fantasy, let us know too. We hope you're going well with that. You can probably beat me in the captain's challenge if you're lucky. Okay. No, most of you will be able to do that. No problem at all. But until we chat again very, very soon, good luck, and we will wish you the best and your team the best in the upcoming AFL finals.